Hi, my name is Stephanie Seving, and I'm the author of QuiltAddictsAnonymous.com. Today I'm going to teach you how to make no-waste flying geese units. This method uses all squares, and there isn't a single scrap of fabric that is wasted. And the way you do it is you take a piece of fabric that measures 1 1/4 inches larger than your finished width of your flying geese unit. And then you have 4 pieces that are 7/8 of an inch larger than your finished triangle. So if we look over here, these measure 4 inches across by 2 inches tall. So my my big triangle that is this background piece measures 5 1/4 inches square, which is 1 1/4 inches larger than my width. And then my little squares measure 2 7/8 of an inch square, which is 7/8 of an inch larger than the height of my finished piece. So the first thing you want to do is you want to turn the fabric over so that the wrong side is facing up, and you want to draw a line from point to point on all 4 of your squares. You don't have to do it very dark at home, but I'm going to run over it a couple times so you can see it on the video. Then I'm going to take 2 of my squares and I'm going to lay them one on top of another on my points like that. And I'm going to pin those in place. If you've been watching the other videos, I haven't actually pinned anything yet for the Triangle Bootcamp series, but I do think it's worth doing for this one, especially if you're going to do several in a row, because then you don't have to keep repositioning fabric every time you go to the sewing machine. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew a scant 1/4 inch from either side of the line that we drew. So we're going to line the edge of our presser foot up with that line, and I have my sewing machine set so that it will sew a scant 1/4 inch, and that scant is very important. It's 1 needle width toward that line that we drew. And always make sure you take out your pins when you sew towards them. You don't want to sew over a pin because you can break your needle, and that can actually be quite dangerous. Now when I get down to the other side, I'm going to sew down the other side of that line we just drew. If you were doing a series of these, you could chain piece all one side and then do all the other side. Saves on time and fabric. Okay. So now we're going to come back to the square, and I'm going to cut down the center line that we drew. And you already have your accuracy from when we drew the line and sewed down it, but you do want to make sure, so it doesn't matter if you cut exactly on that line, but you do want to make sure that you do have about 1/4 inch on either side, so that way your seams don't pop open when you get on the long arm. So now we did take these over to the iron, and we're going to press the wings of the flying geese unit up. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set my seam, and I'm going to press them up like that. And you would do this on both of your pieces, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to do it on the one. Now this looks really goofy. This looks like, how in the heck are you going to get a flying geese unit out of this? It looks more like a heart. But you're going to have to trust me and do the next step, and I promise you'll have a perfect flying geese unit. So now I'm taking my other square that I've drawn a line on, and I'm arranging that so that the point of the drawn line is at the point of what looks like my heart. And now I'm just going to sew down either side of these lines again, and your needle should come out right in the corner right here and here when you're going on either side of it. That's how you know you hit a scant 1/4 inch and that it's going to turn out correctly when you're done. If you would like, you can pin at this time. I'm not going to because I'm just doing the one, but if I were doing a chain of these, I probably would pin. And my needle came out right in that crevice. so I know that I'm in line. All right, so we've got that sewn, and now we need to cut again on the line that we drew from point to point. Okay, so now it's starting to look a little bit more like the flying geese units we're used to, just we don't have any of the wasteful fabric like we normally do. Normally you'll sew your line, and then you cut this off, and you have triangles that are wasted that you're not going to do anything with. This time, you don't have any waste at all. So I'm setting that seam, and I'm going to press it open. And now we have a flying geese unit. And for every one of these you do, you end up with 4 flying geese units. So if you don't like making flying geese units, because they definitely they can take a lot of time, and when you're dealing with biased seams, sometimes it can be very frustrating when they don't turn out the way you're supposed to. But with this method, you're going to get 4 for every one you do, so it's instant gratification. And you also are not going to have to worry about that stretch and the bias. Now we have to do one more thing before we're completely done. We have to trim this up, because even though we did our math ahead of time, that doesn't mean that everything is going to be perfectly square. So we have a couple of points that I'm going to look at. We want this to be 4.5 inches wide, so that way when we sew our 1/4 inch seam allowances to put it in the quilt, it finishes 4 inches by 2 inches. So I'm lining up my 2.5 inch mark with the bottom of this point here, where the wing and the geese unit come together, right there. And then I'm doing the same thing over here. Just I'm lining it up with the 4.5 inch portion. And then there's one more mark I look at. The 2 1/4 mark and the 1/4 inch mark on your ruler should be right where that point is, and if it is, then your points are going to end up right in the correct spot every time you piece them together. So I've got that lined up, and I'm just going to trim off this little edges. And this really is not a whole lot that I'm trimming off, but it really does make a big difference when you go to piece your flying geese units together. So now I've got it turned around, and I'm looking at a few different points this time. I'm looking at my 4.5 inch and my 2.5 are lined up with my edges, and my 45-degree line is now in line with this seam right here. So now I know that everything is where it should be, and I'm going to trim off those edges. And now I have a perfect flying geese unit. All my points are where they're supposed to be, and they're going to fit perfectly when you go to put them in the finished quilt. So you can use this video to tackle that pattern that you've always wanted to try but have been intimidated by because of flying geese units, or you can just quit wasting fabric and use this method, or you can download my pattern for the quilt you see here today that I designed especially for the Triangle Bootcamp series, and that's at quiltaddictsanonymous.com/patterns. Thank you very much.